Do you struggle with poor sleep? What about irritability and just anything can set you off? What about excessive thirst or urination? That's a biggie. And then also adrenal or thyroid issues. These are so common, especially with women. And if you have said yes to any of these, or possibly even some outside of these that we're going to learn as we move through this video, then I'm about to introduce you to your new favorite drink called the adrenal cocktail. I'm going to tell you what all goes in it, why those things in there, and then also when you want to drink this, all the things. Are you ready? Let's go. Okay, the adrenal cocktail. This is actually a whole food mineral supplement. And so it's called the adrenal cocktail because it replenishes much of what when the adrenals are under stress and our body's under stress, what it takes away from those adrenal glands, right? We want to replenish that. So the three basic components that are in an adrenal cocktail is whole food vitamin C, sodium, and potassium. So let's dig into each one of these components and why we need this in this mixture. So vitamin C, whole food vitamin C is very important here because there's a lot of supplements that contain ascorbic acid, and that is not truly vitamin C. It's a man-made vitamin C, and whole food vitamin C is much different than that. So this is definitely a whole food form. But whole food vitamin C contains something it's an enzyme called tyranase, and this stimulates the liver to produce ceruloplasmin, which then makes copper basically work properly in your body. And I have done other videos that I will link below about this topic because it's one that you need to understand. It's huge in the balancing minerals and vitamins world. So you definitely need to understand that. And I'm not going to take time to do that in this video, but I'm going to link that below. So also vitamin C plays a pivotal role in activating enzymes essential to collagen production, which obviously we know is a key structural protein in blood vessels and skin and other tissues. It's also required for the activation of neurotransmitters and for energy production. In addition, this whole food vitamin C has a broad spectrum of antioxidant functions to protect the cell structures from free radicals, basically things that can damage the cell and then lead to disease later. Whole food vitamin C is essential, like seriously essential for adrenal stress hormones in times of adaptation, which basically means in times of stress. And it's a cofactor to epinephrine, as well as it's very easily depleted under chronic stress. So basically, when our body's under stress for whatever reason, there's so many different causes of stress on our body, we are at a higher we need more of this vitamin C, right? Because our adrenals are calling for more of it because we're calling on our adrenals to work kind of on overtime. So that is a couple of reasons why we need this whole food form of vitamin C. Basically, it makes us more resilient to stress. That is a great way to sum that up. Okay, moving right along, sodium. So sodium is another really key component of this adrenal cocktail. And sodium is super key in just making sure that our cells are happy, so therefore our body can function properly, and then also the ratios of minerals. And so when we are stressed, when we're under more stress, we are we're calling for the need for more sodium. And the more sodium that we lose from our cell causes us to dump more potassium. And the balance of sodium potassium significantly affects the symptoms that we are having, that are experienced by those that have adrenal fatigue. Sodium also supports many functions in the body, from the electrolyte balance. It's important for your nerves and muscles. 85% of it actually is found in your lymph. So it's actually really important to make sure that your drainage pathways are working properly. One really key fact about sodium is that it helps with magnesium absorption, which is really important because so many people are like magnesium happy, right? So many people are on a magnesium supplement, which I'm not saying is bad, but the sodium to magnesium ratio is 5:1. And so you can see how we need a lot more sodium than we do magnesium. And so when that ratio is flipped, it creates this cell confusion, which then puts more stress on the body. So if you're on a magnesium supplement and you've never had your minerals tested through like a hair test or something such as that, you just need to keep that in mind, because if that ratio gets off, it can really cause some bad symptoms and, again, more stress on your system. It also salt improves insulin sensitivity. So that's something that can really help our blood sugar balance. And in general, when we don't have enough sodium in our system, it just creates more stress on the body. So lastly, we have potassium in this mix. So potassium. So obviously it's one of the electrolytes, and potassium has the highest concentration in the cells. And so, like sodium, potassium levels are maintained by something called aldosterone, which is in our adrenals, right? So when we have too much salt or fluid that's pulled from within our body, this small amount of sodium in the cells begins to migrate out. It's saying, well, I'm just going to come out here because there's not enough. So as the sodium is pulled from the cell, as the water is pulled from the cell, so is the sodium. And so this leaves behind a dehydrated cell, as well as obviously sodium deficient, right? It just creates this whole issue within our body of excessive thirst and excessive urination, because that water is not where it needs to be, which is inside the cell. It's not in there. So our cells are dehydrated, even though we're consuming this large amount of water. So if you've ever realized that's what was going on with you, like, gosh, I drink a lot of water and I just seem to be it's just going right out of my body, this is a huge key for you. So in addition, in order to keep the sodium-potassium ratio inside the cell constant, potassium begins to migrate out in small quantities too. So it's basically saying, if sodium's not there in the cell, then I'm not going to be there in the cell. So it follows sodium wherever it goes, the potassium does. And so this creates an even more imbalance in electrolytes, which then leads to decreased adrenal function. So a lot of times when we need our adrenals the most, they literally can't function the way they need to. And so it just puts more and more stress on our body. Okay, so a quick overview. So we need salt because it's very important to the function of our body as far as energy, hydration goes, and it restores the aldosterone, which is kind of needed more when our body's under stress and pulls on the adrenals more. Potassium, it's needed for energy. It's greatly influenced by the adrenal hormones and is often low when we have adrenal dysfunction. And then the vitamin C. Obviously, we need it for our adrenal function because most of the stores are stored there for this whole food vitamin C. And so these are the components, most likely, of like a classic adrenal cocktail. Now, I'm going to give you some variations on what you can do depending on, what your preference is. So let's do that right now. I would say a classic adrenal cocktail calls for pulp-free whole food vitamin C, which is most likely orange juice. So say you have 4 ounces of orange juice, you're going to want to add something that has potassium in it. Now, I would say for the classic adrenal cocktail, that is going to be coconut water. So you can put equal parts OJ, coconut water, and then a sprinkle of salt. That would be like basic adrenal cocktail. But I'm going to give you some different scenarios here. So say you are really, really sensitive. Maybe you're coming off like a certain lifestyle, or maybe you're diabetic, or whatever it might be, that you just don't consume a lot of sugar. And so this, sugar in the form of OJ is like too much on your system. I think over time you'll see that that's probably not the case. And I also have one more tip to give you to kind of lessen that effect. But if you're just like, I don't want to do that, the OJ, you can just eat a piece of fruit that has the vitamin C in it. So like an orange, or there's other things that you can do, like camu has a great natural whole food source of vitamin C. Acerola cherries are another one. So there's different options there, and I'll try to put some of those in the description as well. But for the most part, you're going to go with OJ. So you have your base of OJ, and then for potassium, of course, you could add the coconut water that I mentioned. Another option is to add cream of tartar, and this has potassium in it as well, and it's just a powder, right? So some people like to add that to their adrenal cocktail. Another option is something called bumbleroot, and this is a powder that has dried coconut water, it has boab dried in it, and it also has a little bit of salt in there. So really, you could just add the bumbleroot powder with the vitamin C whole food form, which would be OJ, and make your drink out of that. You wouldn't really need to add much extra salt to that. You could, if you were really depleted, like you have done your hair test and you're very depleted in sodium, you might want to add a little bit extra. So that's another option for you. I really like to add protein to this drink because it really helps to temper that response from the sugar and the OJ. So there's two different ways that you could do this. You could add a scoop of collagen into your adrenal cocktail. No matter how you make it, you could just add a scoop of the collagen in there. And so that's going to give you some protein. Obviously, there's lots of benefits to collagen too, but it's going to really use it for the protein in this. And then another option is raw milk. And raw milk is an excellent source of not only protein, but calcium. Excellent source for calcium. It's a great source for vitamin A, the active form of vitamin A, which is retinol, which really helps with the balance of copper, iron, lots of different things. And most people are deficient in vitamin A, which is causing other things to be out of balance. So raw milk is just something that is excellent for us in general. But if you have a sensitivity to dairy, if you cannot get raw milk, you could totally just go with the collagen. I just wanted to throw that in there. I don't always add raw milk, but it's a great addition because of those reasons. So that is a little bit on how you make it. One more thing that I wanted to mention is when do you drink it? So you can have this adrenal cocktail up to 3 times a day. Now, if you're just starting out, I would say try it 1 time a day. And, if you decide, hey, I like this, I want to do it twice a day, and it's not too overwhelming, do it twice a day. That's probably the times when most people, the amount of times per day, that most people try to get an adrenal cocktail in. Now, best times of day to drink this would be ideally around 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. This is because with our circadian rhythm, most of the time our adrenals are getting kicked in around this time during the day. So that is like, if you had to aim for something, 10 and 2 would be a great time. But in general, just try to think about it as having an hour before or an hour after a meal. It's better to be taken without food. It just works better that way. So I hope this has been interesting to you. Maybe you learned something, maybe you knew a lot of this, but maybe it just reminds you that we really need to replenish our body and look to balance our minerals. And this is one of the ways that we can do that. And I hope this becomes your new favorite drink. I think that it is something that would be fairly easy to put into your day. And these ingredients are fairly easy to find as well. I'm going to link some of the ones that you might not be quite as familiar with in the description of this video. So check that out. Of course, I always make a blog post with all of my YouTube videos. So I'm going to include that link below as well. And if this is really just you love this type of topic, then you're going to want to hit subscribe to my channel, because I talk about these types of topics that are really foundational to our health and or questions that I get often. I love to come on here and answer those as well. So click subscribe to my channel. Give this video a thumbs up if it helped you. And if you have a question, anything you want to let me know, please do that in the comments below, and I always answer all the comments for you. One last thing is that if you love this topic of just how can I move my health forward? How can I see more of the bigger picture to really get my health back on track? I have made a free video training for you, and I'm going to put that in the description below as well. And it's really going to help give you the bigger picture so that you can finally get out of that tunnel vision that you might have been in for too long, kind of spinning your wheels, and get you headed in that right direction. So thank you for joining me on this video, and I'll see you on the next one.